Welcome to Ellie Goldsworth's Relationship Flow. We are returning to our Intimacy Flow series. Excited together to be united and strong, especially during such a challenging time. That will be the focus of the class, how to remain a united and strong relationship flow, even when things are very challenging, like we have had in this whole long year and a half or so. So since really the Corona story started, and it's continued in Israel with some tragedies we mentioned and comforted last week with the comfort of the soul, and now where we're holding in the current climate of crisis in the Holy Land due to a lot of, I won't say any causes, but just a lot of political and let's just say strife. Almost like a war situation between our neighbours, and it's got pretty intense, but at the same time I do feel a unity in our strength, and that can transfer into our relationship, that by unifying together, by, as my wife, a soulmate, so wisely put, staging our life, that you can have those moments of bonding even during such a hard time, like you're feeling a bit sadder or traumatized or in pain from, say, the local riots going on, or the sounds of missiles and sirens, and all the different things. Finding out our parents, my grandparents, for my children's flights have been cancelled, and it's difficult for them to reschedule, and the trip that we planned and haven't seen them for over a year and a half is looking more and more difficult to take place. Flights are being redirected to the southern Israel instead of the normal regular airport. We hope in the next few weeks it will settle down, but this is a challenge to relationships, to intimacy. How can you be intimate when there's such difficult times? And it is even a halakha, a rule, that when you're in a time of danger, or the people are in a time of danger, that there is such a concept that intimacy is not really the right thing. And it's in the back of my mind, I am aware of that halakha, that ruling in the Jewish law, that you have respect to the people by not engaging. But in my opinion, for this generation, not that I'm giving a halakhic ruling, but just as advice or encouragement to people in the Intimacy Flow podcast, they can go ask your own rabbi what to actually do. But in terms of, or whoever if you're not Jewish, but your guide or whatever whoever you speak to or reference, I would say that this is a time even more so for intimacy, obviously with sensitivity, and it's not like a time to work on trying different ideas or experimenting in the relationship, or obviously you're maintaining a certain soberness and seriousness about the situation that we're going through. But at the same time, the intimacy and the times of connection are really important. As my soulmate was wisely saying, that we still needed to go out for a drink, and we got a nice coffee and sat there and just talked, and other things like connecting through watching something or listening to music that relaxes after a long day. Even though I'm not really the type of guy who really relaxes so much, like even then I'm usually like busy doing stuff. If my wife is comfortable with me doing that, in terms of posting or editing my book or whatever it is, United Souls book that we're developing, and if we're watching that, it's sort of, that's my way of relaxing, sort of doing stuff. Everyone's got their personal way of expressing it, but the point is that intimate bond needs to be there. And often you need to, even with you could say, oh well, I need to hear the news, or I need to have my phone on 24/7. I disagree with that. Even in this time of difficulty, I think you should turn off your phone and put it on airplane mode at certain points, because mental health, emotional health, and being able to bond intimately is more important than being updated of the latest tragedy or latest struggle. And remember, the media has a tremendous bias to only show the not good, to only show what's going wrong, and there's only so much a person can absorb of all these tragedies. And it's not like a mitzvah to know every single thing that's happened. There's no commandment, there's no obligation to have to know every single struggle that goes on during this time period and be updated every 5 seconds. It's actually okay to get a general overview and to be aware enough to know that you need to pray more or do more acts of kindness, and be actually aware of what's in front of you right now. How can you contribute? So social media wise, how to put out positive content about the current situation, to motivate people to do good things, to give encouragement to the side that is obviously representing justice and truth and trying to protect ourselves, etc. Being aware where your family is, things like that. But the point is that you still need to maintain emotional and mental well-being. I mean, there's a famous story that I remember of a rabbi back in the day during the Israel state when it was first forming. There was a lot of wars and battles going on, and one of the rabbis would literally leave the radio on the whole Shabbat or the whole Yom Tov, and it was actually causing him heart problems because of the trauma of listening in to all the updates that were coming in over the radio. And I think it shortened his life, in my opinion. So they brought it in the book that I read, the autobiography, as a praise to this righteous person. I'm not going to say his name, but to me it was actually quite disturbing that, as much as he had a love for the Jewish people, but you shouldn't let yourself get sick. Because what about your wife in front of you? What about your kids? What about your actual community that he was a rabbi for, and all the people that he could be influential on? Maybe he could be more dynamic, helping people rather than crying and tuning into the pain. I'm not obviously criticizing a holy man, and he knows what he's supposed to be doing, and I'm not criticizing anyone else who is very caught up with the news and the situation, and all respect to you. But if we're coming to advice, in terms of what would be most effective, in my opinion, for the intimacy flow in this context, that in order to have a bond in your relationship, you're going to have to turn this stuff off. You're going to have to allow the intimate life to continue even during these trying times. For me, one of the most moving stories is when you heard of people who were able to still create children during the Holocaust, even if they were in a life or death situation, and they still managed to bring life to the world. They still managed to get married. They still managed to function on some level. And to me, those were the most moving stories about how people could still rebuild, even during a time of seeming destruction. And I think that's a lot of what our purpose is in our relationship, to turn the darkness into light, to turn the pain into joy, to represent that light in the world, to have that intimate, connection with the people that are around you. And especially right now, as we're really meant to be in a time preparing towards a very happy time. Yesterday was Rosh Chodesh Sivan. It's the first day of the month of Kabbalas Torah, a very special month. We receive the Torah. It's a joyous occasion. During these special days, we don't say Tachanan. We don't say any, prayers of, mourning or subjugation. We're in a happier state of mind, and the prayer service is more upbeat, and how we should live. We're preparing right now Yom Yuchas, the day of where we connect ourselves to our legacy and our inheritance. And the next 3 days is called Yemei HaGabbalah, where we prepare these 3 days for Shavuot, to receive the Torah. It's a special preparation time. One of those days is going to be Shabbat, where we obviously disconnect to reconnect. So we really do turn off all the news and just hope that there's not going to be too much conflict, and things will come to a more peaceful state. We can pray for it. We can pray for all the soldiers, all the people protecting us, and to understand that that we have a lot of appreciation and gratitude to all those people, and we pray that they'll be successful, and the people who are in charge should find a way to come to some positive conclusion to this current conflict. And it's the idea is that we learn and grow from these struggles and opportunities, and bring some sort of peace of mind, so we can still have intimacy, still have relationships. If we're not able to be with our partner because we're in the army, or we're in some situation where we're at the front lines of the medical world, or whatever it is that we need to be, so that intimate connection doesn't disappear. We're always bound together. That's the idea of United Souls, that we always have that unification. And that's why this real podcast is, we become united in strength, in order to be able to understand that on the soul level, that by having more connection, more intimacy, more oneness, more revelation of truth, or that we're already one soul, that's another way of bringing unification and getting rid of some of this division that's going on. because we're manifesting it in our homes, we're manifesting it in our relationships, and that spills over onto the next person, and then hopefully, say that person's about to get into a conflict with another person, but because they had a more positive experience just before that with someone else you just touched on, because you're more unified, they're more unified, then the conflict is lessened, and then it doesn't escalate, and then we just brought more peace to the world. That's the idea, that we can have an influence physically, emotionally, spiritually, and realize that our soul level is influencing all the time the whole universe. We have that power within each one of us, and not to feel so helpless that we can't do anything about the current situation, because we can through the soul level, and through having positive intimate relationships and having positive interactions with people and smiling. Like I was reading Lewis Howes today on a tweet or on one of these social media posts, and it was really amazing when he said that we really do live short, and we have the power to smile at another person. We have the power to touch on people, to lift people up a little bit more. And even if a day is not the best day, but we can see that day as a challenge and an opportunity rather than as a difficult, disaster, God forbid, we can turn this challenge that we're in right now. Even it seems like the challenges just keep getting more and more, but then that obviously means we're growing more and more, and we have ability to overcome them. And I do believe that this current conflict will resolve, and I'll be blessed to see my family, and in the full sense, and there will be more unity in the physical sense, but on the spiritual level we're already having that. And that's what Shavuos really, when we get to that Kabbalah Torah, that final day of receiving the Torah, we're really becoming one with the Jewish nation and the world, that there's a certain connection of oneness, as we spoke about in Amunah's Our Future podcast, and also in our Unity Flow podcast, that we become unified. And that, even though physically we're not going to be intimate on Shavuos, because that's not the custom, but we have the intimacy of eating Yom Tov Sudas and having that meal together, and and then the meaty meal, and all the tefillahs and all the prayers of Tehillim and Psalms of David HaMelech Yotzai, and the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov Zechusah Ben Aleinu, the idea of yichudim and unifications the Baal Shem Tov brought to the world, and understanding that every relationship is a unification, and understanding that every Amen Shemari Rabbah is a unification. Every bite we eat machal is gematria Yud Kei Vav Kei and Shem Adni, which is the gematria Sadik Aleph, Sadik, and is a very deep concept of unification. Every time we eat the machal, the food, we're bringing unification, as the Noam Elimelech brings. It's the idea that once we tune into how we can spiritualize and unify this world through eating, through relationships, through intimacy, through everything we're doing, through learning, through spirituality, through Torah, and we understand that we have a power to bring more unity to the world, and that will affect the conflict out there, because the evil people that are pushing the conflict will have less power spiritually, and they only feed off our lack of unification, and they will stumble, they'll fall, like as David HaMelech, you look in the Psalms and you see how he fought these wars on a massive level, and yet he was also able to have many wives and bring down many children and have an intimate life that was important and valuable. And it wasn't simple, but it was something that Psalms came out of. Like his relationship with Bathsheba came out of all the Psalms that he taught us how to do tshuva, through Tehillim, and that's something which, with that tikkun of Tehillim, of all the missiles, is Tehillim. We have to say Psalms, we have to connect in to our legacy, that we have this gift of David HaMelech and Malchus and completion and kingship. And I did mention to my wife the idea Shavuos has a lot to do with bittul, but we have to understand that the bittul, the nullification of our negative sides, is just to bring us to a more unified side. It has a purpose, and as my wife wisely once said, and does say and does teach, is the idea of stage of living. Make it a really positive Shabbos and Yom Tov, as hard as it is. Don't let this situation hold back those moments of bonding. Let them take place and bond and connect with full joy as much as you can. Generate as much light and positivity in your relationships, and that will give you strength to be able to then deal with the current conflict and situations that we're in. And please God, we'll see them all come to resolution, and we'll see the ultimate unity with our relationship flow and the world. Amen. Thank you for listening. Share your relationship flow.